Even if you don't follow the sport, you've almost certainly heard of the Super Bowl. But the bowl game started with college football. It usually involves teams from different conferences facing off. Anyway, you probably knew that already, so let's just get straight into it. Thomas Robinson Stadium, Bahamas Bowl. It's not just a name, it actually is in the Bahamas, which explains why it's so small compared to the rest of the stadiums you'll see in this video. The stadium obviously has track and field in mind, and wasn't specifically built for football, but the design seems to suit the laid-back atmosphere of the Bahamas. Would have been cool if the floodlights were palm tree shaped. Camping World Stadium, Citrus Bowl, Cure Bowl, and Cheez-It Bowl. Despite looking very similar to Raymond James Stadium that's not too far away, this is not and has never been an NFL stadium. It has, however, hosted several professional teams over the years, but the Citrus Bowl is what this stadium is known for, having hosted it since 1947, although it was originally called the Tangerine Bowl. The stadium itself was even known as the Citrus Bowl for a while. FAU Stadium, Boca Raton Bowl. This one would fit right in the Bahamas, palm trees galore, and a view of the Atlantic Ocean. It's also a lot more colourful than the typical college stadium, and has a lot more chairback seats. The only negative I can think of is the lack of a facade for the most part, it's just exposed steel. No big deal though. University Stadium, New Mexico Bowl. It's the chameleon of stadiums because it seems to blend in perfectly into its environment, with the earth embankments and the desert-coloured concrete. Unlike the adjacent Isotopes Park, it doesn't get a whole lot of love, this stadium, but it seems okay. And one benefit is if you can't choose between soccer and football, just set your chair up here and watch both. Or don't. Independence Stadium, Independence Bowl. Like Camping World Stadium, it doesn't have a permanent college football tenant. Well, Louisiana Tech do use it, but as an alternate venue. For the most part, the design is fairly dated, but the south end zone is a different story. It has a rather nice brick facade and just looks that little bit nicer than the rest of the stadium. Ladd-Peebles Stadium, Lending Tree Bowl. The former home of South Alabama now only has the Lending Tree Bowl on its college football calendar. But don't worry, the stadium doesn't lie dormant for 364 days. I believe 4 different high school teams call this stadium home, so it's good to see it's still getting some use, and it's certainly an adequate stadium for that purpose. SoFi Stadium, LA Bowl. Bit of a difference from the last one. I love this stadium. I don't particularly care about the Rams or the Chargers, but I still tune in, just to see this spectacular stadium. The exterior is flashy yet elegant, but the interior is all about the former. I love how there is like 6 or 7 tiers of seating for the most part, allowing those in the nosebleeds to be closer to the field, but it also just looks really cool. Caesars Superdome, New Orleans Bowl. Another NFL stadium, but this was actually home to a college team and not too long ago, Tulane Green Wave. It's actually the largest fixed dome structure in the world, so it deserves the name Superdome. And like Superman, it does have a kryptonite. And that is of course hurricanes, the natural enemy of dome stadiums. But it's still around after nearly 50 years, which is impressive for any NFL stadium. Brooks Stadium, Myrtle Beach Bowl. It's not one for the traditionalists, because God dang it, Bobby, that grass ain't right, as Hank Hill once said. Some might say it's tacky, but I mean, if you're gonna use fake turf anyway, it's not a big deal. And teal happens to be a fine colour. Other than the field, it's quite a nice stadium, with some traditional design elements here and there. Albertson Stadium, famous Idaho Potato Bowl. I promise it's just these two, the rest are green. The field is not the only peculiar aspect of the stadium though. They definitely didn't buy those stands off the rack. There are some odd shapes among them. But it doesn't matter because it all comes together to create a weird stadium in a good way. Toyota Stadium, Frisco Bowl. It's the biggest stadium in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Built specifically for soccer, but that doesn't mean it can't host some football. It has the same aversion to roofs that most college stadiums have, allowing spectators to soak up the Texas sun. And an intimate atmosphere like this is sometimes a good thing. Amon G. Carter Stadium, Armed Forces Bowl. These shots were actually taken during the Armed Forces Bowl, as you may have noticed. I'm not sure what the University of South Alabama has got to do with it though. They're in the Sun Belt. The stadium is one of my favourites, partially due to the elegant buff brick facade, something you don't see too often. But overall, I love how it's modern and traditional at the same time. Raymond James Stadium, Gasparilla Bowl and Outback Bowl, which is either sponsored by Subaru or that steakhouse or the sparsely populated areas of Australia. It's the middle one. Gasparilla is like a pirate-related festival if I'm not mistaken. So I guess it's the perfect stadium to host the Gasparilla Bowl, cause pirate ship. Other than that, it's a fairly straightforward design. Clarence T.C. Ching Athletics Conference, Hawaii Bowl. I may have spoken too soon when I said the one in the Bahamas was the smallest. This is currently the biggest football stadium in Hawaii that's still in use. After a bit of a renovation, it is the temporary home of the Rainbow Warriors, and of course the Hawaii Bowl. I'm slightly disappointed they changed the rainbow running track to green, although it does kind of look better. Crampton Bowl, Camellia Bowl. I'm sure that causes confusion in more ways than one. It'll actually take place on Christmas Day, which I'm sure will cause many household arguments. The Crampton Bowl is the former home of the Alabama State Hornets, but now just hosts high school football teams, a similar story to Ladd Peebles. It actually started out its life as a baseball stadium, and in case you're wondering about the name, at one point it was actually a proper bowl stadium. Not anymore. Ford Field, Quick Lane Bowl. Isn't that a chain of 10-pin bowling alleys for people who don't have much spare time? Quick Lane Bowl. Need lane. 7 o'clock. Okay. Damn it. Damn it. Yay. Goodbye. Come again. Given that the average temperature in Detroit at this time of year is well below freezing, a dome is potentially life-saving. You know, to the one guy that goes shirtless no matter what the weather is. I really like this section of premium seats. It doesn't really match the rest of the stadium though. Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium, Military Bowl. I guess it's like the Armed Forces Bowl, but it includes the entire military, even the pencil pushers, not just the guys with guns. That's almost certainly not true. It's pretty cool to have a Blue Angel outside the stadium. But the situation behind the northern end zone is probably my favourite part of the stadium. It has a bit of everything. A grass berm to sit on, some seats to sit on, and what appears to be a memorial garden, I guess it would be called. A fitting feature considering the stadium's name. Protective Stadium, Birmingham Bowl. It's brand spanking new for 2021. The stadium, not the Birmingham Bowl. It's a major downsize from Legion Field, but this game never really sold out that big stadium, and Protective Stadium still has a decent capacity of a little under 50,000, and it's in a much better location right near the city centre. It has a fairly cutting edge yet classic look to it. I love the brick and steel exterior. It kind of matches the nearby baseball stadium and it ties into the city's industrial history. Gerald J. Ford Stadium, First Responder Bowl. As mentioned in the American Athletic Conference video, it's not actually named after the former US President Gerald Ford, despite being a former college footballer himself. I did actually call him a former vice president in that video, which is still true, he just was the actual president as well. Anyway, that was all irrelevant. The stadium is as classic as you get really. A horseshoe structure, a brick facade, a grass berm, and it offers some spectators a pretty decent view of the Dallas skyline. Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium, Liberty Bowl. It's good to see an actual bowl stadium. The big undulating bowl shape is similar to Autzen Stadium, but even more so Tampa Stadium, now demolished. This was actually built 2 years prior to Tampa Stadium. Famously, there is a large crack running through the Liberty Bowl, although I can't actually see it. I may have mixed that up with something else. Crack or no crack, it seems like a great place to crack back and watch football. Petco Park, Holiday Bowl. In case you're wondering why they are playing at a baseball stadium, well, it was held here, but it went and got itself blown up, the silly duffer. I actually think it's an interesting change-up when they play football at a baseball stadium, and Petco Park is right in the heart of the city, which gives you that skyline view once again. Obviously you wouldn't want it to be your primary stadium though. I think that's the last baseball stadium I guess not. Chase Field. Guaranteed Rate Bowl. If you're a baseball fan, you could probably think of a more appropriate stadium to host the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Chase Field is one of the few places where the retractable roof is more useful for keeping the heat out rather than the rain out. It was actually one of the first ballparks in the world with a retractable roof. That's probably why it looks a little less streamlined than usual. Fenway Park, Fenway Bowl. Starting to see a bit of a pattern here. Fenway Park seems to be a polarizing stadium, but that might have to do with the Red Sox themselves, because I absolutely love this place. It's so full of character, especially compared to the last one. No offense. It's certainly an unusual sight to see a football field with the green monster in the background. Yankee Stadium, Pinstripe Bowl. The old Yankee Stadium hosted a football team for most of its existence. And at one time there was actually a New York Yankees football team. So the Yankees have a history of sharing their stadium with football. This stadium is also quite polarizing. I quite like it, but some people say it has a bit of a cold, sterile look to it. I can see where they're coming from. That's the last of the baseball stadiums. Alamodome, Alamo Bowl. This one has actually hosted baseball, but it's clearly a football stadium first and foremost. It's probably the closest stadium there is to being an NFL stadium without ever actually having an NFL team. But if an NFL franchise were to come to this city, they'd probably need a brand new stadium. The design isn't the most exciting, it seems to be more about function than style. It's a bit of a jack of all trades. Bank of America Stadium, Duke's Mayo Bowl. Just a slightly less meaningful name than the Alamo Bowl. This stadium is all about the exterior. From ground level it really is quite impressive, like a citadel done up in the Panthers colours. But the interior is just a simple double-tiered bowl. At least it's done up in that signature shade of blue. And I keep saying it, but skyscrapers in the backdrop is always a plus. Nissan Stadium, Music City Bowl. Nashville, of course, being heavily involved in the tube and throat singing industry, gets the name Music City. There's no obvious sign of that at Nissan Stadium though. What would have been cool is a giant guitar-shaped scoreboard like the Nashville Sounds have at their ballpark. Despite this, it's a fine stadium. It just could have done with a bit more that sets it apart from the rest. Allegiant Stadium, Las Vegas Bowl. The Death Star is home to what might be the luckiest team in college football. They came from here and get to play in here. Nobody's saying no to that trade. Much like SoFi Stadium, it doesn't actually have a retractable roof, but a large translucent fixed roof instead. It does, however, have retractable windows to let in a bit of a breeze. I believe the actual Death Star had some lovely French windows. TIAA Bank Field, Gator Bowl. Probably not one of the NFL's best or even one of Florida's best stadiums. It has a very bare bones exterior and the interior is nothing to write home about. But it's not too bad. It has those ridiculously wide screens, as well as some swimming pools. Perfect for those that don't really care about what's happening on the field, which is ideal considering the team that plays here. Sun Bowl, Sun Bowl, Sun Bowl, Sun Bowl. I need to upgrade my studio, the echo is becoming more and more noticeable. And I'm sure there's a bit of an echo at this place as well due to the unique setting, nestled amongst these rocky hills. They actually had to carve out the rock in some areas to accommodate the stands. That's pretty cool. Much like the Liberty Bowl, it's the stadium that's named after the game rather than the other way around. Arizona Stadium, Arizona Bowl. It seems like a solid stadium, nothing out of the ordinary, but it's looking sharp. Especially the relatively new north end zone seating. As one commenter from a previous video really wanted me to point out, within the stadium there's a facility that makes the huge mirrors required for the observatory over here. So that's kinda interesting. I believe that's where Shaq got his bathroom mirror from actually. Energy Stadium, Texas Bowl. Built right next to the Astrodome, which a lot of people don't realize is still standing, despite both major tenants moving out around 20 years ago. Unlike its San Antonio counterpart, it does actually have a retractable roof, but it's a fabric roof, so it lets in plenty of light. One aspect of the interior that gives it a bit of a college football feel is a small section of bleachers behind the north end zone. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Peach Bowl. And it also hosts the Celebration Bowl, which is the only bowl game in the FCS schedule. This stadium is featured on this channel half a dozen times by now, but I don't get sick of seeing it. It's just a work of art. If the Transformers could transform into a stadium, it would probably look like this. Except it would be called the Hasbro Mercedes-Benz Mountain Dew Beats by Dre TCL FedEx 7-Eleven Bud Light Oreo Chinese Red Bull Goodyear Stadium instead. I love the eastern side, in particular that unique Falcon-esque seating and those huge windows. AT&T Stadium, Cotton Bowl Classic. You may already know this, but there is actually a Cotton Bowl Stadium that used to host the event. But this one came along and blew it out of the water. I mean, in terms of features, it's night and day. The roof is kinda like its predecessor, Texas Stadium, except they actually went ahead with a retractable roof instead of leaving a big hole. It's just a stunning stadium all round. Hard Rock Stadium, Orange Bowl. Like the Citrus Bowl, but fascist. No lemons allowed. If you're a tangerine, you could probably get away with it though. Also, if I was a vandal, which I'm not, the signage outside Hard Rock Stadium would be a prime target. You know what I'm getting at. I love the exterior, it seems perfect for a place called Miami Gardens. Ironically, the stadium used to be an orange bowl before the renovations. It's now a vibrant aqua, which is ideal for the Dolphins, makes them feel at home. State Farm Stadium, Fiesta Bowl, not to be confused with the Siesta Bowl that raises awareness for narcolepsy. As far as facades go, this stadium's right up there. It's supposed to resemble a snake, and it does, in a subtle way. Much like Allegiant Stadium, they've gone the extra mile to maintain a natural grass field by putting it on wheels, which I can appreciate. Come to think of it, it's probably between those two stadiums for the best stadium situated in the desert award. Rose Bowl, Rose Bowl, Rose Bowl. Ah, damn it, that echo again. It's the OG bowl game, but also the highest attended bowl game. The Rose Bowl Stadium is a partially rose-colored bowl with a huge capacity, although from the field it really doesn't look that big. Over 90,000? Really? But that's because the seating is mostly bleachers which take up less space, and the stands aren't very steep. It's a very simple stadium, but there's a lot to love about it, especially that view. Caesars Superdome, again. Sugar Bowl. In a country that puts marshmallows in their cereal, I wouldn't be surprised if a bowl of sugar was a common breakfast in some regions. We've already talked about this stadium though. And the national championship game will be held at Lucas Oil Stadium, a fine choice of venue. Uniqueness is something I value perhaps too much in a stadium, And this one has it in spades, with its industrial-inspired exterior. But it also has all the features you could ask for. Retractable roof, retractable windows, a bit of a downtown view, all while looking mighty fine on the inside and out. And that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, have a good one.